Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you have pen and paper because I'm going to explain to you something that you weren't aware of.
My problem!
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Tinfoil Radio, coming to you from a secret underground bunker.
I hate it here.
You hate the bunker?
Yeah.
You're starting to go blind. I noticed that.
Well,
You've been in the darkness of the bunker.
We finally
for so
revealed
long.
to the audience, luckily, last week, that I'm stuck here, and he keeps me... Anyway, go ahead.
You gotta you gotta choke up on the mic a little bit, buddy.
We'll do it. We'll deal with it later off the air. Go ahead, Jake. Because I'm professional, unlike some people.
Yeah. So last week was coronavirus stuff that we knew at the time. When we got done recording, we were like, maybe we shouldn't do current stuff because Tyler even said, he's like, by the time this posts on last Friday, there'll already be like 4 or 5
Better
other
information
and 4 or 5 other different conspiracies and all that stuff. So we want to go away from that, and we want to do something that is completely different and something I didn't realize was going to be this big of an episode. I got 4 pages of research here.
It's irritating. He used my toilet paper.
Yeah.
Now I gotta wipe my ass with like manuscript.
Well, we're
pages.
just gonna dig out a hole.
Well, make sure you cover it up.
Anyway, it's gonna be music. Our first music conspiracy.
That's good. There are quite a few of them.
There are, and by doing research for this one, let's stop teasing it. Let's just say it right now. We're doing the Beatles. Not just Paul is Dead. That's
fucked up.
That's the most popular one.
Man. Oh, before we get into the episode, let's start off with something fun, Jake.
What?
So, oftentimes when people talk Beatles, there is the whole
not this.
Beatles or Stones argument. And I know, but reveal to our audience what side of the argument that you come down on.
I like the Beatles.
What side?
I mean, I like both bands, but I prefer the Beatles.
Ditto. But what side do I come down on?
You're a Rolling Stones guy.
And why is that? Let me tell you. Because rock and roll should be. You like Iggy and the Stooges. You proved that the other
it's
night.
sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Rock and roll to me should be
Dirty.
about shooting up in an alley while you're getting blown by a hooker.
That's like Nikki Sixx or Iggy Pop or pretty much.
And the Rolling Stones make me feel like that. The Beatles are like, hey, let's go hang out. And
but what about
let's do mushrooms and have a picnic. Like fucking.
What about Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds? That's about LSD.
It's Beatles.
It's drugs.
Yeah, but it's really
the Beatles.
happy.
I don't know. Maybe they just had good
Rolling
trips.
Stones had terrible trips. You can tell.
Yeah. Well, they're in all their music.
When they were going through the 60s, the Beatles were like, oh, man, this is so mind-expanding.
Well,
and the Stones were like, fuck, we got fucking ripped off by that guy again.
I can't get no satisfaction. I can't get fucked.
I can't get fucking good acid. All right.
No, I was going to say, like, it's about
Beatles
not
were getting
being
that
able to have
blotter
sex.
shit, man. Okay.
No, I need to turn my fan off. It's cold.
So,
Turn the fan off in the bunker.
Argue
All
amongst yourselves after the show is done, which side of the argument can come on. We've given you both good arguments either way.
I would love to see Rolling Stones conspiracy stories. If I can find some.
Oh, dude,
I would
what
gladly
about
have
their
them.
first guitar player? All right.
Oh, right. So, it's impossible at this point to not know who the Beatles are. They are easily one of the most important rock bands of all time. You can have your preferences, but I would say just in terms of importance, music wouldn't be what it is today without the Beatles. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I think so.
Right? So they're a legendary group, and it's the span generations. I mean, I think if I have kids, they're going to know who the Beatles are because they're everlasting, it seems like. So it's bound.
Everlasting.
I don't know. I was trying to sound intellectual. So that's bound to create conspiracies. So, there's
Well, we know that the
Multiple
Beatles,
ones.
The Beatles were white British kids trying to play
From Liverpool.
American black blues,
Yeah.
and they failed miserably, or should I say, magnificently.
Well, that's what every rock star tries to do. Iggy Pop.
Led Zeppelin literally was trying to play blues songs and like blues covers, and they came up with that kind of
Well,
sound.
you need to listen to.
You didn't tell me what I need to do.
You need to listen to No Dogs in Space because they taught me about the Stooges.
Wait, is that
And,
another podcast?
Yeah,
I don't listen to podcasts.
you should. Anyway, it's the same thing. Iggy Pop said he wanted to make his version of the blues when he got into music, and it's not good. Like it's not good blues. It's good punk music.
Yeah.
His latest album was really good.
I'm sure.
No, 2016.
Whatever.
It's post-pop depression. It's
You're
great.
post-pop.
All right, let's get into the first story or theory that is the Beatles conspiracy theories. We've talked about Paul is dead. That is a big one. We will cover that at the end. But this is the opposite of Paul is dead. It's the theory that every member died and was replaced except Paul McCartney.
Fun fact about the Beatles: if you play Abbey Road backwards, you get a really excellent recipe for lentil soup by Linda McCartney.
Wonderful lady. Wonderful lady. All right, let's...
He has no shoes. Take some lentils and boil them for a while.
I don't even know what...
That was the record going
Oh, I heard it. So, Beatles superfan and University of Virginia student Chris Feschel.
Does he call himself a super fan? Because that's really stupid. I'm sorry.
Well, you got to keep in mind most of
I'm a
these
super fan.
most of these came from an article written by Huffington Post,
Oh, great. Those
So,
goddamn liberals.
fake news liberal website.
Fucking shit.
So that's part of my sources. I have other sources as well, but they're pretty much the main one for a lot of these conspiracies. So Chris Fischel believed the opposite of the whole Paul is dead theory, and he came up with his own separate theory in 1994. He believes that Ringo Starr was the first to die all the way back in 1963, followed by George Harrison in 64, and then, of course, John Lennon in 65. And he writes in an article that he published.
No, he
in a
does not
school
say
paper.
I buried. Shut up. I'm already. Okay, I skipped ahead again a little
I
bit,
know.
ladies and gentlemen.
We're going to talk about that more later.
I hate this guy already.
So he writes in the article, 1963, on the front cover of With the Beatles, Ringo's face is not in line with those of the other Fabs. Clearly a clue that Ringo on this album is he has Ringo.
I don't know why,
in
but this
quotes.
whole fucking story just creeps the shit out of me right now.
Ringo on this album is different from
You're
the
gonna have
others.
to walk me to my car. Okay.
Obviously, we're in a bunker. Obviously, he had died between the first two albums and been replaced.
Obviously, that's
Right.
what a normal, critical thinking human being
Absolutely, buddy.
jumps to.
So after Ringo is George. In
Sarcasm.
1964, on the cover of A Hard Day's Night, George is the only Beatle with his back to the camera in any of the photos. And he's the only one with a cigarette, a coffin nail,
Oh, for fuck's
in
sake.
quotes, that are the signals that George had died. I told you this is going to be a fun episode. So then we skip forward to 1966. On Revolver,
Okay.
John
Whoa.
John number 2. So John, he couldn't just put John in quotes. He had to put John number 2. Sings the song, I'm Only Sleeping. By the way, this was published in 1994. John Lennon had been killed at this point. He was murdered in 1980. So this guy, you're telling me this guy thinks it was somebody else, a different John Lennon was murdered.
I don't know, but I'm gonna have nightmares tonight. God damn it.
John number 2 sings the
I'm
song.
seriously like really creeped out right now.
I'm only sleeping. Sleep is, of course, a metaphor for death. I mean, that one's stupid. That's too easy. A 1967, in Strawberry Fields, John number 2 says, I buried Paul. At first, they may suggest that Paul had joined the other three Beatles in dying. However, earlier, John number 2 sings, Nothing is Real, which shows that this latter comment is not a real clue, but rather a red herring to throw the unwary off of the real trail.
Chris Fischel, get a damn job, dude.
You couldn't see it.
I'm a University of Virginia student. That's not a that's not a profession. Get off
Fisher
your
closes the
ass.
article. Fisher closes the article.
By saying, I don't know what I'm talking about.
and
Can you
asking for
help
more
me?
help.
Can you tell me that I'm
Yeah.
right or wrong? Yeah, you're wrong. You're an idiot.
So that's the first conspiracy theory. And by the way, that is kind of the starting point of a whole nother conspiracy theory. And
That's a whole lot of swag and a whole lot of
Yeah.
time on your hands.
So-
Like shitty weed is what that guy had.
yeah.
Oh, dude, you know what happened?
Or he took some Lucy in the Sky.
Dude, he's got his back to the. That's and you just want to shut people like that into their homes, nail the doors shut, and just let them slowly die like in The Sims. Remember when you do that?
You used to lock your people in The Sims? Lock
You
them
never
in the-
did that? You never like put a Sims in a and then walled them in with no thing and just watched them die?
No.
Wow.
Did you really do
I
that?
never did that, but people did.
Oh, I was going to say, you guys.
Go look it up on YouTube.
What I used to do is my joke
It's
was
horrifying.
I would buy all the furniture, but I never built a house, and I'd make a joke that my guy's living on the streets. And then I played the Sims 2 with pets, so then I got a dog, and I got him to look like my dog at the time. But then I put a little suit and top hat on him. He died shortly.
I downloaded
because I didn't feed him.
I downloaded a sex carpet.
You got a sex carpet?
Yeah. So you know how like you would get them to like go into the bed, and basically what
Right.
happened is they'd go under the covers and
They'd
it would-
make a heart, and then
well
they'd be under the covers.
yeah,
and
and then woo,
yeah,
like that.
ooh, yeah.
No, I downloaded like a couple of patches,
So you could actually make them have sex.
different stuff. I had like a drum set, which was really fun, and then I had like alien creature walls, like H.R. Giger,
Yeah.
and then I had this carpet where I could make them go and like, and literally when you clicked on it, you'd have the option to have sex.
Nice.
2 guys, 2 girls, guy and a girl, whatever.
Anything goes.
I was the master, and I just made it horrifying. No.
I love those lives.
Let's talk about the Beatles and then a sex carpet.
Yeah.
What the fuck, Tyler?
that's the episode we're doing
Sorry.
tonight, baby.
Sorry.
Hey, we said last week's episode was too heavy. We got a little too political, and we're
Sex
like,
carpet. That's my new band name.
that's a good name.
So
this week's all about fun.
Sex carpet. Okay.
Sex Carpet will play us into the next.
Sex carpet.
That's a good name.
If anybody tries to take that, I will.
Well, it's on the podcast now, so we own
yeah,
it.
no shit.
You can't have it.
Okay.
All right, the second conspiracy theory as we sashay over the sex carpet into the. I try to make.
I do want to see that
segue.
movie.
The Beatles never existed. Is a conspiracy theory. Now, there is a website that popped up in 2011 claiming that the Beatles never really existed, and no, it's not like the Danny Boyle movie that came out last summer, yesterday, where there's a world without the Beatles. You know, they didn't make any music. This is actually proposing something dumber and kind of darker. It's back to what we were saying about the Paul is dead. Pretty much all of their conspiracy theories are tied around the idea that there's no way that these 4 people could have made this good of music. That is the basis for all these conspiracies. Is there's no 4 people could be that talented. That's essentially what this is. All right.
I'd argue that, but
So anyway, it is suggesting that the original Fab Four are actors or body doubles or clones. One of those 3 things.
or all 3.
This is from the Beatles Never Existed website. It has become apparent to us in this extensive and painstaking research that there were never just 4 individual people known as John, Paul, George, and Ringo.
They were Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. Get it straight.
Who composed
Open your Bible.
one rock and roll band known as the Beatles.
The Beatles.
And rose to fame as the world's first supergroup. For all intents and purposes, as far as we can tell, no one such group ever existed.
Here's why it's not a super group. You want to know why?
Because there's only 4 members.
No, because nobody was in a band before the Beatles.
Right.
Like,
you would have. Yeah, that's what the whole VH1
like Cream is
thing.
a super group. You got Eric Clapton, you got Ginger Baker, you got fucking
Led Zeppelin.
What's his name?
Led Zeppelin's a supergroup because Jimmy Page was Crosby, Stills.
No, the Birds.
No, the Birds. Right. I'm thinking of
Yeah, but nobody else was in anything.
Nash. God dang. I was thinking of Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Nash and Young.
Nash and Young. That's what it is. You got me. You knew the line of thinking.
So here's what the problem with this is.
You like them because you're a liberal. You hippie liberal.
Fucking dirty.
I knew we'd get back into
Goddamn
politics.
liberal.
Anyway,
No, but okay. So, have you read the Dirt by Motley Crue?
no, but I
you-
saw the shitty Netflix
Okay,
movie.
I'm not going to see it. You want okay?
It's bad.
Well, first of all, they're really shitty to women. Okay, that's
Yeah.
beside
They're
the point.
horrible to women.
Really, okay, that's beside the point. The point is that in the book, they talk about how they did all these things while they lived in one house, and somehow never got kicked out, despite all the crazy shit that they did.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you could argue that Motley Crue would not have existed if that landlord or whatever had been more vigilant. So you can almost say like that landlord had a hand in making Motley Crue a real band.
Yeah.
So there's arguments to be made that like, the
No,
Beatles
it's-
aren't just the Beatles. I mean, there
silly.
was Brian, whatever their producer, Brian, I can't remember his name, but they had a producer and he just recently died. But he produced like most of their first couple like 50s styles.
It's just it's funny to me that people think.
I want to hold your hand and shit like that.
By the way, the website starts with "This is not a joke," so they want to be. It isn't on the
You are a joke.
research. Yeah,
You're a
but
jerk.
that's the thing that ticks me off about these conspiracy theories is, well, I think they're dumb and silly, and they're obviously stupid fan theories.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the idea that how can these four guys make this music and be this relevant for 40, 50 plus years? And it's like, dude, it's possible. Human beings can be that talented.
Do you know? I mean, just for
That's
the
like saying how did Led Zeppelin even come to be? That can't
For-
make any sense.
well,
How did
yeah.
AC/DC or any rock and roll band after the Beatles?
Yeah,
How can that even be
AC/DC
possible?
is amazing. And, yeah. And if you, I mean, look, guys, for the listening audience, okay,
Look, I know it's cheesy.
how many? Do you know how many really, really talented people that you know that with just the right luck and different circumstances could be like rock stars?
Oh yeah.
However, the big difference between like people who are doing that and like me and you is that they fucking hustled the shit out of themselves to get where they are.
Yeah.
Nobody's just going to come to you and be like, hey, you seem like somebody who can write some really good songs. Do you want a record contract? So anyway, but think about that, people.
Yeah.
There are really talented people that just...
Basically, this is proposing that different pictures of the band show several changes to height and their faces, and I mean, they're even got their mannerisms. I can't even talk. You know what? We're gonna start that over. Cut. I mean, even their mannerisms change each time, Tyler. It just makes so much sense. There's even more subtle changes, like some members being left-handed and then eventually right-handed. This proves that the Beatles couldn't have been the same four people.
You know what pisses me off
What?
is when Paul McCartney plays the guitar.
Why?
It's like, stick to the bass, asshole. Fuck.
What are you going to do next? Play the drums?
Yeah, what I do.
You imposter?
You know, it's really the funniest thing to me about the Beatles
Yeah.
is that I'm sure Ringo played other instruments besides the drums
I mean, he sang a few songs. even.
on the albums, but he really didn't play anything significant other than the drums. All the other three guys played piano, guitar, bass.
Did George Harrison really have a solo career?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I only think of Paul McCartney and John Lennon. I knew Ringo had a solo career, but George Harrison, I never listened to any of his music.
He's not. He is widely.
It was obvious that the two
He's
main
widely-
voices were Paul and John. There's no question
So
about it.
okay, so just to get this
It's
out
like
of the way.
Gene
Okay.
Simmons
Yeah.
and Paul Stanley.
Right, but just to get this out of the way, Paul McCartney writes silly love songs. Okay, he does. John
Yeah.
Lennon is
He's whimsical.
is dark.
Yeah.
John Lennon had a shitty mom and had a shitty childhood and just is not happy about a whole lot of shit. Okay, you put those two guys in a room and you get the Beatles, except for not quite, because you still need a drummer who's open and willing to do whatever they think is good, and
He's not
also
gonna
contribute
question their artistic vision.
his own ideas.
Right.
Ringo Starr. But then, what was the glue that made the Beatles who they are? Because I already gave you the first three components. The biggest one, the glue,
George, huh?
George Harrison. It's
Do you think he
it's
broke
widely
up fights between Paul and John?
no, but it's widely argued, and rightly so, that out of the four Beatles, he is the most all-around talented songwriter out of all 4 of them.
I can't name one George Harrison song from the
I
Beatles.
know that you can't, but if you looked up on the Beatles website or
he
so,
helped
he
write
wrote
most of them.
a lot of the really good. But here, and he wasn't recognized as much of a songwriter as John and Paul, because it was John and Paul who were always,
They were the stars.
But seriously, listen to John's shitty fucking solo career. Listen to Paul's shitty fucking solo career.
Oh, whoa,
Wings,
whoa, whoa, whoa,
Wings.
whoa.
If I hear Wings, I want to stop the car, get out, and set fire to my car. I hate Paul McCartney's solo career.
I disagree.
Together, they're great.
Having a
John and
wonderful
Paul
Christmas
together?
time? You don't.
I'm gonna throw up.
Simply
Don't.
having
Stop.
A
I'm gonna
wonderful Christmas. But see, you just right there that whole rant you went on proves the point that this can't be real, because the Beatles doesn't work without their chemistry.
It doesn't.
Beatles does not work without those 4 together. 'Cause
And
you're
they
right,
had
you're
they
right.
had a
Listen to
certain
their solo
dynamic. Yep.
careers.
Yeah.
Listen to their solo careers. They're totally different.
Not really. I mean, Paul probably had the most success.
Well, Paul, I think, had the closest to the Beatles because he was, again, he's whimsical, he's fun, he's poppy.
Reed,
Where,
dorky and stupid.
well, yeah, and then you look at John Lennon, who's writing a Christmas.
I hope he
wrote-
never hears this, but honestly, I can't deal
He's-
with Paul McCartney, man.
Why do you hate Paul McCartney?
I'm a John Lennon guy. There's an argument to
Oh my
you never heard
gosh.
that
You can like
argument,
both,
John.
man.
Or no,
You're so
no.
absolutist. You have to be one or the other. You can be both.
I hate Paul. I don't hate him. I know that.
John, you like John Moore. It's all right.
No, when you get John's solo career was crap too, but when
First
you
of
get
all,
the
I'm
two
so
of them
pissed you're talking
together,
shit about Wings. Don't make that face at me.
dude, Wings is the worst thing that ever happened to music. Oh my god,
Oh,
Band
you
on the Run.
Band on a Run is a
Just
great
pick
song.
a fucking song. It's like 9 songs in one. Okay,
You gotta back up off the mic if you're gonna yell at me.
fucking crap.
You're gonna make someone crash their car because you're shouting at them. Wow.
Sorry, I can't stand that song. It's like 9.
You know
hey,
what? We're not here to talk about Wings.
yeah,
We're here to talk about the
good,
Beatles. You know.
because I'll.
So yeah, this is pretty much just extensive and overly researched nonsense on the appearance of these guys. It goes from the eyebrows, the teeth, smile, hair,
The eyebrows.
the way they stand, the way they look. Yeah, look away at something. I don't know.
Whatever.
I don't know if someone really believes this nonsense or it's another birds aren't real situation. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, birds aren't real. At a certain point, I was like, well, clearly this guy's just dicking around and this is satire. This website, I didn't do enough reading of the actual website because you can only read so much stupid shit. So yeah, that is closely tied to the other main one, which is Paul is dead. So we're gonna switch gears into a different kind of conspiracy.
Switch gears.
This one,
Rusty gears.
this is one that is ripped right out of Conspiracy Thinking 101. If there was a book called Conspiracy Thinking 101, it is the
Ripped.
theory that the Illuminati created the Beatles to control the youth and introduce them to soft drugs. What's the difference? You know, is weed and LSD soft
it's
drug?
ripped like Chong, but not Cheech on all of their albums.
So, all right, this is from possible future episode candidate Dr. John Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
He proposes that the Beatles were a hit, and then because they got so successful, they were co-opted by the Illuminati. He specifically cites
They have
again.
nothing better to do.
He specifically cites the Committee of 300, which again would probably be a future episode, and the Tavistock Institute of Relations. He believes that they influenced the American media. They were the ones to declare the Beatles were, quote, atop the mountain of rock music, American rock music in particular. Coleman
Which is
states,
stupid because they're British.
yeah, but he's saying that these two British secret
Fellows.
cults
Oh.
made them climb the top of American media. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't make any sense. But
I get what they're saying. They were the top of rock and roll in America.
So Coleman states the following, quote, people who are sentimental about the Beatles will find it hard to believe that they were pumped up and used by the Illuminati to introduce soft drugs amongst middle-class
hell are
American
soft
youth,
drugs?
end quote. I'm assuming he looks at it as like LSD,
Pharmaceuticals?
marijuana. I don't know where the distinction of soft drugs go for this guy. So if you're wondering, the Committee
If
of
you
300...
don't want to, if you're addicted to it and you don't want to suck a dick to get it, like that's how addicted to you are, it's a soft drug.
Yeah.
Hard
So,
drugs will make
meth-
you suck dick for it.
Meth, heroin, they're hard
drugs. And I do mean, and it's referring to the penis that's going to go in your mouth.
Hard?
It's going to be hard.
Jesus Christ. All right.
That was my dirty moment of the week.
Ding.
Ding. Okay.
So, for those wondering, again, possibly a future episode, the Committee of 300 is a group allegedly started by British aristocrats in the 18th century. They have secretly been running things in British government, media, and everything. The Tavistock... Is that Tavistock? Did I put Tavistock? I think it's Tavistock.
Taco Stan.
Taco stock. You want some taco stock?
It's Tavistock. Taco. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I typed
Tavistock.
Tavistock.
Yeah,
It's Tavistock.
Tavistock, like really, it's written that way like millions of times in this article.
Oh man, then it is Tavistock.
Yeah,
I thought it
Jesus.
was
Taco.
Tavistock.
Taco.
Anyway,
Next
the
week.
Tavistock
Tacos, the conspiracy.
The Tavistock Institute of Relations is a real charity that was started in 1947, but conspiracy theorists think it's a cover for real shadowy wrongdoing.
You know why charities that go for a long time
It's
like
like-
that
yeah, it's kinda
just
like-
are not real charities after a while?
Yeah, it's kind
Because
of
you have to pay people to run it.
it's kind of like it's the idea of like the George Soros, Alex Jones and George Soros, like they're behind everything. They're involved in it because he thinks George Soros is behind globalists and all this stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Again, Alex will he's going to be a recurring character on the show. Coleman refers to this as the Aquarian conspiracy. Here's a chunk of this lengthy article, and man, it's a doozy. Are you ready for this? Quote, the phenomenon of the Beatles was not a spontaneous rebellion by youth against the old social system. Instead, it was a carefully crafted plot to introduce. That is really how you wrote it. Crafted plot to introduce by a conspiratorial body, which could be identified a highly destructive and divisive.
Because you need
elements.
a comma. Instead, it was a carefully crafted plot to introduce, comma, by a conspiratorial body which could not be identified,
write
comma, a highly I'm saying.
Yeah. That's
why if you put the comma after the introduce. Read along, kids.
Yeah, learn. You're learning so much.
Bling.
We're going to start that sentence over then. Instead, it was a carefully crafted plot to introduce by a conspiratorial body which could be identified.
Which could not be identified.
Which could not be identified. I can't
Jewish
read
goddamn
tonight. Why don't you read the damn thing? I can't read it. Goodness gracious. Which could be identified a highly destructive and divisive element
Did you practice?
into a large population group targeted for change against its will. New words and new phrases prepared by Tavistock were introduced to America along with the Beatles. Words such as rock, these are all in quotes. I'm doing air quotes for you. Rock, in relation to music sounds, teenager.
Who calls
cool,
it music
dis-
sounds?
I know, right?
Do you want to go to the opera and
No,
listen
it
to
says
some music
rock
songs?
in relation to
Music
music
sounds?
sounds.
Yeah,
So he's not
that's-
saying they're saying music sounds. He's saying they're saying teenager, cool, discovered, and pop music.
We noticed that they're listening to these things called music sounds. I think we should get them to try and say rock.
And you know what? They're teenagers, and they think it's cool.
Yeah,
So
God.
they were Alex.
You know who wrote this?
You're fucking up this
Sorry,
quote,
sorry,
man. You can't
sorry.
stop me, because then I got to start the whole quote over.
Let's do it. Okay.
You
sorry.
read it.
Where are we at again? We're a lexicon of disguised
Forget it.
code.
Forget
Okay.
it. Forget it. You ruined it. The
I'm sorry.
episode's over.
Whoever wrote this, like,
It's hard to read.
Salt is like spicy to them. Okay, like that's they invented the word
You know how hard
teenager. I'm
this
sorry.
crap is to read out loud.
Okay, so let me finish. Words such as rock in relation to music sounds, teenager, cool, discovered, and pop music were a lexicon of disguised code words signifying the acceptance of drugs and a ride with and accompanied the Beatles wherever they went to be discovered by teenagers. Incidentally, the word teenagers was never used until just before the Beatles arrived on the scene. I love Jake for doing all this research. I do. Because otherwise we don't have like a little framework, and it's called a rundown for those of you not in the radio business. But man, I can't imagine how you got through typing that whole paragraph without shitting yourself from laughing so hard. Like it's just, I mean, teenagers were not invented by a fucking British charity.
Teenagers are just people that are in their teens. But he's saying
What the
they
fuck?
created teenagers.
Yeah, and then finish up the thing there.
Yeah.
Finish up the little.
Essentially, Coleman is stating that the Illuminati used the Beatles as a tool to introduce
What are
youth
fucking soft drugs? Yeah, soft
to
drugs.
soft drugs and obsession. The Aquarian conspiracy is ongoing and thought to be started by Paul and Ringo themselves. So this guy can't even commit to his own theory and has to say, well, they said it. It was their idea. It wasn't me saying this.
And also, so it took a rock band from England and then a British charity to get the youth to understand it and be obsessed with things.
Coleman, I got news for you.
Soft drugs and obsession.
It doesn't take that much convincing for someone to smoke weed or do acid. They're gonna want it. They're gonna do it. All it takes is, hey, buddy, you want to smoke this?
Listen.
Okay.
You want me to be obsessed with that teen idol enough that I'll buy a magazine called Tiger Beat, like with a straight face? No. I'm a teenager. I don't get obsessed. Are you...
Yeah, well, but that's again, what's so funny about that.
It's so funny.
Because
I'm sorry
you
I
don't
fucked it up.
need...
I kept fucking it up for us. But we got through it.
No, it's just because I'm terrible at reading aloud.
No, it's fine.
I get...
It's a really funny quote, though.
It was hard to read because it's just so stupid. The thing that gets me, you don't. Do I think the Beatles maybe introduced people to drugs and different ideas? Sure, it was flower power. It was the '60s.
Yeah, but not just the Beatles.
Right, and it's the culture. It's not just one band. It was the culture they were in.
Yeah. The Beatles started the Vietnam War and got Kennedy killed.
How many times have you gone to a concert and you smell weed? People spark up weed at any concert. And they do drugs if they want to.
Listen.
There's no music.
Folks, if you want, go ahead and look at your history if you want, but if you want the truth, the 60s, 1969, okay, was the culmination of a perfect storm of social, economic, and other circumstances that caused the entire world to go take a shit, okay? And then that led into the 70s, which was just awful because everybody was recovering from the 60s.
You had the sexual revolution. You had Vietnam. You had all the Watergate. All this shit was happening. Of course, people went to drugs because it was crazy. It was hard times. And it was a weird,
but you can't, I mean,
volatile time in our country.
Right. My point is, in the world, really. But my point is, I mean, that whole 20 years. But my point is that you cannot look at one thing.
Right.
You can't look, it was Kennedy being assassinated. Well, yeah, that's part of it.
It's a sum of all of
it
its
was
parts.
The Vietnam War. Well, yeah, but that's part of it.
Yeah, it's a sum of all of it.
It was, Black Panthers, Malcolm X, Martin Luther. Yeah, I mean, you can take all of these
Woodstock.
things. But you can't look at any one of those things. And anybody who wants to look at Woodstock and go, that was a defining moment of a generation, I want to smack you in the face.
Well, it also, look, the Beatles.
Boo, Woodstock.
The Beatles struck fame when they were on Ed Sullivan.
Really big show.
In 1963. That is right before like flower power and counterculture takes off.
And that was when they still had like relatively short hair. Even then, those haircuts.
That's when they used to wear suits.
Right, you had
and
to.
Then they came to America.
Dude, even those short haircuts that they wore on the Ed Sullivan show, even those haircuts, people like dads in America were like, you don't fucking wear your hair like that, you goddamn hippie.
Well, they sang the song "I Want to Hold Your Hand" and people got upset.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, because obviously, again, as we said earlier in the show, hand is code for penis.
Well, no, they would want them to hold their hand because they're saying, "I want
to
hold
also,
your hand."
No, it was a gay.
Somebody's holding the
penis.
penis.
Well. It was a gay conspiracy as well.
Somebody's holding the dick. Damn it!
Listen, if I get it wrong, I'm just gonna turn it into a conspiracy.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much that is. Do you listen to Alex Jones? Because that's what Alex Jones does.
No shit.
It's almost like he just
Frogs
keeps
are gay.
changing the narrative as they go along.
Cool.
All right. So this one is fun, and I'm going to ask you to do something for me.
I am not going to get down on my knees.
This one is going to require some dramatic reading. If you want to do some dramatic reading.
Yes, I'd love to.
Okay. Well, before we get there, we need some setup. So this conspiracy theory is the Beatles conspired to kill their first drummer. This is proposed by the, I'm assuming, pen name of L. Gunblade.
Larry Gunblade? I love that guy.
Oh man, you know Larry Gunblade from Gunblade.
No, that's his real name,
Yeah,
man.
you know, you went to a shop, Gunblade and Sons.
You know what? You couldn't buy at Gunblade and Sons? Guns or blades.
It's just their name, man.
It was
It's
a
just
corner
their name.
fucking market, man. They had blades in the butcher shop,
They
but
were
not
too-
for sale.
They were too cheap to get a license. You know, they were like, no, we don't need to deal with that.
You can buy smokes at Gunblade and Sons. You can buy liquor at Gunblade and Sons, but you can't buy guns and you can't buy blades.
Will you back up off the microphone? Good God.
I can't help.
I
get
know,
so
I
excited.
know. It's funny.
Okay.
It's fine.
I'm sorry about your speakers, America.
I'm just gonna say this much.
Sorry about your
gu-
tweeters.
No, the tagline is Gunblade and Sons does not sell guns or blades. That's all it's-
Gunblade and Sons.
So we sell everything, but
Listen,
guns.
the
or
commercial
blades.
is just him going like, "Hey, are you looking for guns and blades? Don't come here.
Stay home.
Go to Walmart."
Do not kill.
Ooh, did you get? I snuck a little socioeconomic dig
Anyway,
in there.
so L Gunblade,
Oh, Gunblade.
or it could be Larry Gunblade. We don't know.
We gotta make a show now. Okay, go ahead.
Larry Gunblade and Sons.
No, just Larry Gunblade. Okay, go ahead.
Sounds like a weird anime. Gunblades and Sons. Gunblade has evidence, air quotes.
Robot. Okay,
It's literally a gun and a blade.
with no guns.
What is it, a bayonet? Jesus Christ. Anyway, all right, so the conspiracy to kill the first drummer. This is proposed by L. Gunblade with evidence. I can't even say his name anymore.
Can't get through with this one. Okay, no, go ahead. I promise. Okay.
So he has evidence that is based on conversations the band had about their first drummer, Pete Best.
And was he there? Just listening?
Essentially, they're trying to say that it got obtained by secondhand from a janitor or some stupid shit. He's even dedicated a whole website to this matter, with conversations starting on September 20th, 1961, and ending in early 1970.
Larry needs to stop watching Spinal Tap.
So, guess what? I found all of those situations. So we have the timeline from September 20th, 1961 to early 1970. Would you like to read this with me?
Sure.
All right. All right. We're going to dramatically read this story. Are you all right?
Yeah.
Written by Larry
Okay, so
L. Gunblade.
So because we were talking about okay, so you don't know this because it sounds seamless, but we just took like a 10-minute break. And during that little break, we talked about remeeting. We talked about reading stuff dramatically.
Yeah.
And so
We
I
were
thought
like,
it'd be
maybe
fun.
Could we do voices?
I thought it'd be fun if we want to. We don't have to, but I already read the first part of it as Chris Walken, and it's okay. I won't say my Chris Walken is the best, but here we go.
Okay, you're first.
Many witnesses have remained silent over the years. Finally, the real story has begun to emerge
Everybody
of the
thinks
Beatles' attempt to fool the entire world about what really happened with their original drummer, Pete Best.
Everybody thinks they could do a Chris Walken.
I did
They
it.
do it.
Mine was really good.
Well, here's many witnesses. Yeah,
Do
yours
it.
is better. They're
Do
too
it.
low.
No, you can do whoever you want.
No, I'm doing Chris Walken.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm kidding.
Because I was going to do Morgan Freeman next.
September 20th,
There you go.
1969.
One.
Bucko. Oh, 61. The body can't read.
Jesse can't read.
A customer at the Beatles hangout, the Grapes, in Liverpool, overhears a conversation after the band's Cavern Club appearance last night, when drummer Pete Best leaves the room to urinate in the alley because he's some dope who can't use the bathroom, pal. John Lennon,
Buckle.
George Harrison, and Paul McCartney discuss the possibility of getting Pete out of the band.
That went a little Chicago. Did you hear that?
John dislikes his haircut. Paul hates how he's getting all the girls, and because he is just a poon slayer, man.
That's
George-
exactly how Jesse would say it.
George states that he's glad they got rid of someone in the band other than himself. The wheel is set in motion, buddy.
Buckle. Okay, so I'm gonna do this part in. I'm gonna try to do a really poor Morgan Freeman. You ready?
Oh God.
December 13th, 1961.
No. December 13th,
During a lunchtime appearance at the Cavern Club, a friend of John's, here's Paul. John. I can't do it. During a lunchtime appearance at the Cavern Club, a friend of John's, here's Paul, George, and John discussing Pete in a dark corner before they go on stage. The general consensus is, let's beat the shit out of this guy. The three consider throwing Pete off Albert Dock on Liverpool's waterfront and selling his drum kit to buy uppers. Okay, folks, this is the first time I've read this. I'm glad I didn't try and read it in a voice because I would be dying right now. Cousin Larry. John is quite keen on the idea, saying he can't get enough prellies to keep himself awake on stage. I faltered there because I can't believe what I'm fucking reading. Yeah. Paul gets nervous and nixes the plan. Okay, you used the word nixes right away. So the eyewitness wanders up to John and says hello. John reacts with a sneer, saying only, sawed off, you
Sawed off, you wanker. All right.
That was horrifying, man. Are we reading this whole thing?
Oh yeah.
Until 1970?
It's not. It's only like 4 pages.
What? No, we don't need to read
No,
all.
no.
come
This
on.
is important. May 31st,
Oh my God.
1962.
No, just fucking
Pete
give
fails
us
to
the
cut his
gist.
hair.
Give us the
Listen,
gist.
shut up. Listen. This is great. Pete fails to cut his hair the new Beatles style, preferring instead to keep his 50s
It's
James
not
Dean.
worth it.
Shh. Keep his 50s James Dean appearance. John, Paul, and
ducktail.
George are furious. According to the unwritten memoir of George Harrison, the band
The unwritten
rigs.
memoir.
Shut up. Listen, you're gonna want to hear this. The band rigs Pete's drum kit to explode. To
Like in fucking Spinal Tap? What the fuck?
Yes.
Shut up. No. This guy watched Spinal. Larry, put your copy of Spinal Tap
Get back to running the
back
damn
in the
store.
back in the bookstore.
Larry, get
In
to
the
work.
bookcase. I know you alphabetize your damn DVDs and your
All right, we're
Blu-rays,
gonna-
Larry.
We're gonna skip to the
Shut up,
end.
Mom. That's what Larry's mom sounds like. Hey, Larry, will you put your DVDs and your Blu-rays away? That's just That's you. Yeah, go if you want to.
I can't even. The whole gist of it is like there's more to this.
Larry's got a lot of time on his hands.
Yeah.
He
So
should run the store exactly. Get to running the store, Larry. These fucking stupid conspiracy theories.
man, I didn't read this all the way through. I just thought it'd be funny to
The
read
gist is okay.
together, but it is getting progressively dumber the
It's
more
the
I
same,
read it.
but everything is the same. Basically, what happens is in each entry, which he has like 90 of them over 61 to 70, and you heard us read like 4 of them, and each one is pretty much the same. George, Paul, or John, or a combination of those 3, get together and they talk shit about Pete, and then Pete finds out about it and goes, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Nothing," and that's it. Until
pretty much.
1970, which is early 1970, which says
Which that it just says. I mean, there's so much more to this. If
Right.
you, well, I'll have a link to this if you really
But
want to read it.
the whole thing is basically each one of those like is the same. It's the same argument.
Essentially,
Let's read the January 2nd.
okay,
because
January
that-
2nd,
yeah,
1969. According to a disgruntled ex-employee of Apple,
the record company.
yes, not the tech group.
Yeah.
Days before the band is to begin filming the documentary film Let It Be, Pete confronts John, George, Ringo, and the faux Paul. So at this point in the story, there's a fake Paul McCartney again.
This guy bought
There's
into the
always-
Abbey. This guy bought into the Abbey
Why?
Road theory.
Is there always a freaking body double? There's always. This is the main.
People are fucking bored.
That
Okay.
is the main thesis of all of these conspiracy. It comes to the idea that it's not the same four guys.
People. Hey,
So
listen,
he
listen.
demands more
Yeah, go
clues
ahead.
to be placed in Beatles songs about the real Paul's death.
What?
If he doesn't see
Okay,
them
so
show
he's
up,
blackmailing the Beatles at this point.
he's blackmailing them with Paul's real death. That's essentially what happens. And then eventually they decide to part their ways. It's stupid. But the fact that they said that they rigged his drum set to explode, just like in
Spinal
Spinal
Tap.
Tap.
See,
So
this
I don't
is
know if this was published before that movie or not. And
probably
who
afterwards,
knows?
I would say, because
Yeah, who
the
knows?
internet's only been around for 20 years, 25 years. Okay, so here's what's really funny. Have you ever seen those like diagrams of like the Earth and like food chains and stuff?
Yeah.
So check this one out.
Okay.
People are bored, so they create conspiracy theories. We are bored,
So we make
so we
fun of them.
read their conspiracy theories. We make a show about their conspiracy theories. People are entertained. So people are entertained ultimately by being bored themselves. What? Boom. Mind
Wow.
explode, dude.
Wow. Let's move on.
Listen here, bucko.
Listen here, pal.
This one's super true. They've been hiding songs in case they go broke.
He's true. It's true.
All right. Let me ask you this, Tyler. You ever heard of the songs "Colliding Circles," "Left is Right and Right is Wrong," "Deck Chair," and "Pink Litmus"? Is that what that is? Pink Litmus Paper Shirt? No, that's because these songs are hidden away in the Apple Records vault.
And somebody made them up with a fucking name generator because those
That
are
is-
horrible.
Well, I mean, Circles Collide or Colliding
Sex
Circles.
Carpet is a great band name, but none of these are good song
Sex
titles.
Carpet would write "Left is Right and Right is Wrong."
Pink litmus paper shirt. Shut up.
That is definitely a name generator one.
Deck chair. Yeah, I'm sure Paul and
Well,
George were
no,
sitting around, and John. Okay.
Hey man, let's write a song about my favorite deck chair.
Okay. Well, Paul, I know you want to write the song about your deck chair, but I'd rather write things about social injustices and peace.
But that's not going to get on the radio,
You
man.
want to write about your bloody wanking deck chair.
We write pop
You
music.
don't even have a deck, just a chair.
But if I had a deck, that'd be the chair on it.
You are a deck.
I'll punch you in the deck. And then that's how the Beatles broke up.
Because of the song Deck Chair.
Yeah, that is our conspiracy theory. That
See,
we're
we're just
sticking
making them up. Just listen, look, let's just hand over fist, baby. Conspiracy theories galore.
to. You know, that's the
If
thing.
we don't have enough, we'll fucking make them up. Let's go.
Here's the thing. We've done only 7 episodes, but I feel confident enough that we could build a legitimate conspiracy theory. Like
we
a big
have.
one. No, I know you made you did those quick fire ones, but I'm definitely sure we could make like a whole.
Oh yeah,
fully
if we sat
researched
down,
episode.
yeah. I mean, we come up with some on the fly, which is how good we are. We're
Anyway.
amazing.
Anyway, so these songs are hidden in a vault somewhere at Apple Records. According to British teenager Martin Lewis in 1971, he included bonus tracks on a Beatles bootleg he sent to a magazine. However, he confessed it was a hoax. And that didn't stop fans. They didn't believe him. And he was talking to USA Today about this story. That's right. The idea of a Beatles catalog was such a big deal that USA Today, when they were, still a respectable, when newspapers mattered, they interviewed this teenager in the 70s.
Back when they still did news instead of infographics.
Pretty much. So he was talking to USA Today about these hidden records in this vault. This is after he said it was a hoax. So he said, to my shock and horror, many Beatles fans refused to believe me. People told me, your confession is a hoax. I know someone who's got these songs. I'm letting the cat out of the bag again. There are no songs.
No
songs.
shit.
So Martin says no songs.
No, you could have fooled me.
Yeah.
I mean,
Are you ready?
are we?
Are you sure you're ready for this one?
Oh my God, we're at the end already.
Yeah. This is the big enchilada. I
I
wanted
gotta be
to.
honest. I came over here and I opened. Okay, so right. Ostensibly, we're in a bunker, but we're not really in a bunker. Okay,
No, we're in a bunker, man.
No, yeah, we're at Jake's apartment. So when I
Don't
walked
break
in,
kayfabe.
he handed. I'm breaking the fourth wall, bitch. So he handed me this 4-page thing, and I started looking at it, and I'm honest. I'm not gonna lie. About 2 pages in, I was like, man, we're gonna be here all damn night.
We're professional.
Because he just does that much research. But here's the thing: once we start talking about stuff, it just breezes by. Because the way he writes it for our consumption, it's just
Oh, thanks, man.
marron.
Thanks.
That's
buddy.
Italian for beautiful.
Thanks. I write an active voice, so
Except for your beard looks like pubes. But that's you told me that, so
I'm sure yours look like your people.
what the fuck you
I
talking
don't
about?
know. Anyway, this is the big enchilada. Tyler,
We're both gonna
Tyler.
find out later tonight.
can you do me a favor?
We're really
Oh,
close.
man.
No, I'm just kidding.
As long as we invite Larry Gunblade,
Will you run the camera, Larry? Okay, what are we doing?
get back to the store. Can you give me a drum roll here with your hands?
Oh.
Or you're going to use your mouth? I prefer the hands. They're better. Paul is dead, folks. That is the main conspiracy of the night. That's
Breaking news from your news outlet. Take it away, Jake Williams.
I mean, I already kind of gave it away.
Well, fuck.
Paul is dead. This is the conspiracy that got me into this episode. So I was going through some ideas that I'd had, and Paul is dead is the idea that came to me recently. Because again, doing all that heavy research and all the heavy shit with coronavirus, I wanted to do something that was just so bonkers and so weird, and something that I knew we'd get a ton of mileage out of. So I looked up Paul is dead, but then I found out all these other conspiracies. So Paul is dead is in reality is the genesis of everything that we've talked about tonight. So let's get into Paul is dead. Probably the most popular conspiracy about the Beatles, one of the most legendary musicians of our time being portrayed as an imposter. There's a group of Beatlemaniacs that think Paul died in a car accident in 1966. They believe the rest of the band covered up his death and hired someone that looked like him and sounded like him. Okay, so obviously that's wrong because Paul McCartney's still alive, and he made one of the best bands ever, Wings. And why are you sitting over there, man? You're not even going to talk about Wings anymore?
I'm going to throw up if you make me talk about Wings.
But anyway, no.
Pick a fucking song.
Band on the Run?
No, I'm saying Band on the Run is like
Band
19...
on the Run.
Hey, let's play this song for a little bit, and then let's play this song for a little bit, and then call it one song 9 times.
What about Live and Let Die? You don't like that song?
No.
What? That is the best Bond song.
What a dumb saying. Live and let die.
It's for the James Bond movie. Live and Let Die. It's the title track.
It's a paraphrase of Live and Let Live. I get it.
Live and let die. That's what I always think.
One of us ever changing
Yeah,
world in which we live in.
You want to talk about a shitty singer on a great band? Axl Rose. He's a terrible singer.
I will say, though, Appetite for Destruction is one of the greatest albums of all time.
Yeah, because they
Fuck
put
yeah.
everything they had into it, and then Chinese Democracy
They
came out in, 2008? Terrible album.
We stopped waiting for the new Guns N' Roses album around 1996. And then he kept saying, like, hey,
It's
man,
coming,
it's coming,
man.
It's coming, man. Hey, listen.
Oh,
it's coming.
He's my favorite to karaoke, though.
I'll bet.
Where do we go?
Why don't we go?
Anyway, but Paul McCartney obviously is not dead,
Apparently.
or so we think. This seems to be very evident in the album. So this is what people think. That this is the proof they have. This seems to be very evident.
He's physically abusing me, ladies and gentlemen. He just hit me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This seems to be very evident in the album.
Ow.
St. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Sergeant Peppers.
I say Saint.
I think you did.
Sergeant Pepper's, yes. St. Pepper's, you know that great Beatles album, St. Pepper's?
That's got to go in a sketch.
Dude, it's Sergeant Pepper.
Larry Gunblade's talking to his dad.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
Larry
you know?
Gunblade Sr.
Let me tell you, Larry Jr. You don't realize you're a Gunblade until you listen to that great Beatles album, Saint St. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
St. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Bread.
Lonely Hard Seltzer.
Lonely Hard Seltzer's bread.
No, that's the bootleg.
What?
That's the bootleg ripoff.
What?
That's at Larry's
What?
store that they play over the PA system. What, you don't like St. Pepper's Lonely Hard Seltzer bread? What a loser. Anyway.
You never heard that song, Raspberry Parks for a Decade?
Stop.
I went way around the corner
Yeah.
for that one.
All right. So listen. This is we're never gonna finish this episode.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So
Raspberry Parks.
I can't.
Sometimes.
Did you just say parks sometimes? Like she's parking a
No,
car.
it's a ripoff of Strawberry Fields Forever.
I know.
It's Raspberry Parks sometimes, not forever.
Oh my god.
Raspberry Parks.
Anyway,
sometimes.
shut up.
Okay,
Ah.
good to go.
Drinking game every time Jake tells fucking Tyler to shut up. All right.
You may die if you play it that way.
This seems to be very evident in the album Son of a bitch. I got my own head. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. There are tons of clues to Paul's fate. The song A Day in the Life, which had the lyrics, he blew his mind out in a car,
He blew his mind out in a car.
and recorded phrase, Paul is dead, miss
British
him.
Army.
Paul is dead, miss him, miss him.
They didn't fucking miss him.
But this only becomes evident when you play the song backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's also the phrase,
I buried Paul.
I buried Paul.
I buried Paul. It's cranberry sauce, ladies.
no,
and
yes.
Yeah.
That's what John Lennon claims to say. He says, I'm saying cranberry sauce. I'm not saying I buried Paul. But people disagree. And wouldn't you know it, buddy, I've got a clip to play for you.
Well, you can't prove a negative.
Check this out.
Oh, no.
So what you're about to hear is going to be, I think, conclusive evidence to the theory. We have a video, I believe it's called from Sgt. Pepper's... Sgt. Pepper channel. Okay. So he is going to play the Strawberry Fields Forever single vinyl and LP. He plays the LP first. He's going to play him at 45 RPM and 33 RPM. So you can hear maybe if it appears in a slower version or faster version. It's up to your interpretation, okay?
You make the call.
You do it. So this first one is going to be the LP. This is also going to be 33 RPM, and then he's going to up it to 45, and then he's going to alternate to 45 and 33 on the single. So the second group that you hear will be the single, all right? Mm-hmm. So let's do that. See, it sounds like I Buried Paul. 30.
It sounds like somebody standing behind the mic going, I buried Paul.
Okay, here's 45. Oh, there it is at the end. Now you hear it?
No.
It clearly sounds like
No, you're high.
No, okay. This guy probably was. All right, so now we're going to be playing the single version in 45 RPM. Buried Paul, you hear it?
No.
One more time. Hear it? I buried Paul.
No.
Very
No,
slowly.
it's because there's nothing there.
No, it is.
No.
Is,
The Beatles were famous for pushing the boundaries of what recorded and slash pop music could be. And one of those boundaries that they pushed was, hey, we can make a cacophony of sounds, and to some people it'll sound like just noise, but to others they'll be able to hear the patterns and everything that we put behind and in front of each other. And all these idiots, instead of going, wow, that's really cool, and just enjoying it, they're like, well, they must have hidden something behind all. Because if you've listened to Strawberry Fields Forever, the end of the song is really long, and there's a lot of like you heard, like boom, boom.
Yeah,
There's,
a lot of
there's
instrumental stuff.
sirens. I mean, there's a whole
Well,
bunch of shit going on.
that was
and people are desperate to belong to anything.
That's the thing. It's also on Sgt. Pepper, which is a huge concept album.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different songs there.
great movie.
And there's a lot of different, like you said, a lot of different instruments and sounds, and they were really playing with sound engineering.
Yeah, they were just like, what kind of shit can you forget, folks? Like they were working with literal tape. Like there was no digital back then. I know
No.
it's hard to understand that.
They were doing like reel to reel stuff.
Absolutely, and they had to like. I mean, can you imagine being the engineer in the studio for
Oh,
any of the Beatles
yeah.
shit? Like, how many fingers you must have lost cutting those lengths of tape together?
Like,
and
How
like,
is this a this is a
like
this is
no,
a
with just the
20-minute
razor
jam
blade
session.
and just like trying to do the fucking.
I'm
you know,
sure.
you put
I want to talk about Pink Floyd. I'm sure we can find
the-
one
no,
of them.
pfft. And you know what's great about
'Cause we
those
can make
guys?
fun of
Never
theirs.
did drugs.
Never once.
Not once.
You're lying.
No, they never did. They made it. They, you know who else didn't do drugs? Monty Python. Never.
I disagree.
No, they made it very clear. The only thing is that Graham Chapman was a fucking filthy, sodding drunk.
I mean, that's technically a drug, but alcohol could be considered a drug.
Not according to the government.
Anyway, so as you heard, there's that theory of I buried Paul. And also, I got to say, I think the Beatles knew about this conspiracy theory early on, and they started fucking with people.
Why not?
Right. If you're going to play with it,
Like,
play with
seriously,
it.
you're
I mean,
not just
Paul
going to listen to the
McCartney-
music and enjoy the music. You got to be fuckheads about it?
Paul-
Well, fine.
Paul McCartney.
Paul's dead.
When Paul
Dicks.
did one of his solo albums is called Paul is Alive. Like he knew about it. So they've played with this stuff. So continuing
like a
on.
pervert plays with his own balls.
So I definitely think the Beatles are fucking with people because it doesn't stop with Sgt. Pepper's. The Beatles
should,
continue to drop hints in their later
doesn't.
albums. Original cover of Yesterday and Today had the band posed amid raw meat,
That makes no sense.
possibly
No.
symbolizing what
Did you-
happened to Paul.
Have you seen the picture?
Yes.
You have.
Yeah.
Do you have? Okay. I don't
I'm
believe
kidding.
you.
I haven't seen it. But
Thank
I'll
you.
pull up the cover right
No,
now.
no.
We have the power of the internet.
We have the power,
Power of the internet. Because
Yesterday and Today original cover.
I'm
See,
doing it.
we're just we're doing it. We're doing it.
I'm doing it right
There you
now.
go. Original album cover right there. Right there.
Where's the meat? I don't see any meat. Those are the babies.
It's what?
Somebody's-
That is fucking creepy. Did you see that?
Yeah.
It's like doll parts.
yeah, I could see why they didn't get that back. So I'm guessing what he meant by raw meat, I think he meant baby, but I don't know how.
Stupid.
Yeah, I don't know who wrote
Who's
that.
this guy?
I don't know.
yeah.
But anyway, it doesn't stop there. So you have but there's still the idea of dismembered babies. So think about that. And possibly symbolizing what happened in the car accident. If a fan holds up Sgt. Pepper's cover in a mirror, the word Lonely Hearts on the drum reads the number one spelled out, the number one, X, he, die, one, the number, one, the word, and then one, the number. So there you go. And then Abbey Road. This is the most conclusive evidence, Tyler. Abbey Road
Conclusive.
has
Well, forgive me.
as everybody should know by now, Abbey Road is the iconic cover where they're going through a crosswalk, and it says it's like a funeral procession how they're walking. John wore all white like a clergyman. Ringo the mourner dressed in black. George donned in jeans like a gravedigger, like with overalls. And then Paul wore no shoes. He didn't need them because he was dead. And they all walked out of the step with others. So that is the one that everybody alludes to.
Yesterday,
The most conclusive one.
everything seems so far away.
Yeah. What about the White Album? They don't even cover that. White, he's whited out. He's a ghost. So, as you can see, there are a ton of conspiracies about, and this is just a handful of ones that I plucked out. There's so many about this band, and I think it goes back to what we said earlier. It is when we started doing the show. Remember, I told you what it fascinates me about conspiracies, and what fascinates you, and why we want to do the show, is the beauty of conspiracy. When you boil it down, it is just people finding ways to explain the world to themselves, not accepting one reality and trying to create a new one. And that can be more evident with the Beatles conspiracy theories because they're almost all the same. It's all the idea of it is impossible.
One of them is dead, or
they're all body
They
doubles,
were-
and one of
yeah.
them's still alive, or they tried to blow up their first drummer. Like they're just trying to
This
find
one goes
ways.
to 11, Paul.
Jesus. No, here's okay.
They're
so,
just trying to find ways to be like, how can these four geniuses
which
be
is
together?
stupid because it's human. I mean, it happens. It doesn't happen often, and not to that degree.
And that's why they're so special. Because it's rare, but it is possible.
Now you know what? I want to close out the episode by talking about a few actual conspiracy things, which are not really conspiracies, but actual stories about the Beatles, which I find fascinating. Okay. So not sure if you're aware of this, but I can't remember what season it was, but during one of the first 5 seasons of Saturday Night Live, John Lennon lived in New York. Okay. And
With Yoko.
and Lorne Michaels was kind of knew Paul McCartney, and Paul McCartney was in town, and they were both at John Lennon's apartment watching the show, and it's live.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lorne Michaels comes out and he says, "I have a check here for $5,000 if John and Paul will come down here right now and play in Studio 8H 3 Beatles songs of my choosing." And it was mainly a joke. Like it's very iconic. Look it up on YouTube or whatever. It's very iconic.
Yeah, I don't know about this.
Oh,
This
it's
is news.
great. It's a great bit because he's kind of joking, but he actually does know Paul McCartney. Like they've been friends for like 50 years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, Paul's been on SNL multiple times.
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Him and Paul Simon and Paul McCartney and blah blah blah. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
But they ended up not coming down and doing it. So it became like this is a bit that he was doing. He wasn't serious. Later on, they actually talked to Paul like decades later about it, and they're like, "Hey, what happened with that? Why didn't you guys go down to Saturday Night Live? That would have been a huge like Beatles fan.
Yeah,
like
that
I
would've
mean,
been-
for the
that would've been
world,
crazy.
that would have been
That would've been huge.
insane." And literally, Paul said, "We wanted to, but we couldn't get a cab." No shit. Like they just couldn't get a cab downtown. They were like, "Fuck, forget it." Another thing, you guys, for homework later on this week.
I don't think. Now, this is my own conspiracy theory in quotes. I really don't think John and Paul hated each other as much as people think they do. I think they were creatively different.
I
and
think they probably had their fair share of squabbles, but that's what
you
happens.
Know when you do.
I want to kill this guy all day, man. I mean, and vice versa. But that's why we work together so well.
Well, that's what I was
Just this mutual hatred. People think it's mutual respect. Throw that right out the window.
That's not true.
No.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is
I don't respect him because he respects me. Does that make sense?
Are you done with this bit?
No.
Clearly not. No.
But they had squabbles.
No. And my thing is, you were joking about it, but we haven't been bad, like horribly, like fighting, but we've butted heads on things.
Yeah.
And whenever you do anything creative, you're gonna butt heads with someone because you both want to make the best you can. And I mean, there was an interview Paul did not that long ago where he said he thinks about John every day.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
They were best friends. They grew up together.
Yeah.
So I think they would have done something like that. But the fact that they couldn't get a cab, that's funny.
And the really funny thing to me is we were talking at the beginning of the episode about the Stones versus the Beatles, and this is really gonna make you happy.
Okay.
I was talking about how the Rolling Stones kind of sound dirty and like, being in an alley getting blown by, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And the Beatles are more like, hey, let's take mushrooms and hang out in the park with a picnic.
Right. Let's do drugs and have a good time.
Where did the Rolling Stones, what were they doing before they became the Rolling Stones? Do you know? Anybody?
No.
They were fucking art students, dude. They were fucking rich art students. Keith and Mick and all those dudes.
Yeah.
What were the Beatles doing before? What were the Beatles doing after and before shows in when they were in Hamburg, like playing in bars? They were kicking the shit out of other dudes in alleyways. Okay, they were the poor Liverpool fucking coal miners kids, dudes.
That made this like whimsical, nice music.
So the Beatles were the real life badasses, and the Stones were like just little ponces, dude.
Well, it's like you were saying.
Little posers, and the Beatles were like the hard asses.
Well, it's like you were saying about John. John had a rough childhood.
Well, if you ever see like anything about it, like his mom was horrible,
Yeah.
terrible mother.
But yeah, so this was fun to do mostly because whenever I get a chance to talk about the Beatles, I want to do it because they're just so fascinating.
In all seriousness, I have utmost respect for the Beatles.
No, yeah, I don't think that you don't like Beatles music, but I just, it's so fun to talk about the Beatles. There's just so much to them, and clearly,
It's kind of like Shakespeare.
yeah, right. And the way that there's so many stories, there's stories that you just told me about that I didn't know, and I'm actually a big Beatles fan. You know, there's a period when I was listening to the Beatles a lot. And to just dig up
I've had more than one of those periods in my lives. And it's the same thing, like I said, with Shakespeare.
It always comes back to you. It's always there
when you
for
do like dive down those rabbit holes, like with the Beatles music or Shakespeare's plays, you start realizing like how fucking brilliant
Right.
this shit is, and you're like, God damn, and you kind of go down that hole for a couple of months,
Yeah.
and you'll do it again in this lifetime,
Well, it
my
was
friend.
the few years ago that it happened. It was because I was playing with my buddy Luke, who anybody that actually follows all the podcasts that I've done, Luke and I, we played the Beatles rock band,
Oh, nice.
and so that's how I got introduced to their deeper catalog because I knew all the the hits, all the stuff you hear all the time, but like I did not know they did Ticket to Ride.
Oh yeah.
Because I'd heard that sound on a local radio station when they would do traffic. It'd be like, beep, 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 yeah. That was like their little traffic bumper. I did not know that was a Beatles song.
Day Tripper.
Yeah, Day Trip is great. But Ticket to Ride is awesome. I like that song. You back in the USSR, you know what that song's about? Fucking Russian girls. That's all that song is about.
And it was honestly
Because
one of
they
the
say,
first.
you don't know how lucky you are.
Back in the USSR, if you listen to that sound, to us, it sounds like, and this is crazy. We started off as a conspiracy theory. We're ending
starting
it.
to build them, yeah.
We're ending it by just going how awesome they are. But honestly, you listen to that sound now, and we're desensitized to that loud guitar, that fuzzed guitar, that distorted guitar. But dude, at the time when that song came out, dude, parents were fucking horrified.
Like,
it
what
was
is this
it was
music?
like if you walked in on your 8-year-old listening to fucking Insane Clown Posse. Like today, you'd be like, no, what are you doing? Like insane. What? No, that's like such backlash.
Oh, yeah.
And yet,
Or Marilyn Manson,
such a good
Korn,
fucking song though.
Slipknot.
So hard, man. I mean that's one of the original like hard rock songs. Because of
They definitely popularized the like distorted, loud, weird guitar.
dude, Paperback Writer. That's a great
We
song.
could go on. Anyway, let's just wrap this bad boy up.
And by the way, real quick, folks, before we go, the song that you think is called "Ordinary," all the Lonely People is not. It's called Eleanor Rigby. So before you go to the record store, well, we don't have those anymore. But before you go to the record store and go, hey, do you guys have All the Lonely People by the Beatles? Be ready for a sneer from that record store employee that's gonna send you into last
No,
week.
he won't. No, he won't because he needs all the business. He can
No
get.
shit. At this point, yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening to another episode of.
I'm gonna listen to the Beatles on the way home now.
I know, right? I'm excited about it.
No, I'm not.
I'll probably listen to him because you'll listen to the Rolling Stones. Thanks for listening to another episode.
Bloody Art Ponces. Yeah.
I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as we had doing it. Like I said, if I get the chance to talk about the Beatles, I want to do
I
it.
almost peed my pants a couple times. This one.
Yeah, because of good old Larry Gunblade.
Still so good.
Yeah, he'll be a recurring character.
Larry Gunblade Sr., Jr., and the second.
He'd be like George Foreman, and he just
Gunblade
names all of
Sons,
his kids
yeah.
Larry. So yeah, this won't be. I don't think this will be the last. It's definitely the first, and will not be the last. Music conspiracy theory episode.
We should do, Kurt Cobain.
Yeah,
that would
the
be a
Courtney
fun
Love stuff.
one,
All that.
dude.
Yeah, there's so many.
That one's near and dear to me.
And it is fun to like look at these legends, these urban legends of these bands. And I'm sure if I can find this much about the Beatles, I could find other stuff about other bands, and it'll be fun. In the meantime, next week,
And real quick, you want to legendize or lionize these people and everything because of their awesome music.
yeah.
But honestly, every one of the 4 Beatles probably shat 2 to 3 times a day while they were alive. just like you and me. No, seriously, there are moments in those guys' lives where they're like, I wonder what's for dinner.
Just like you and me.
It's just hard for us to understand that they
They're
are
people.
Exactly.
Right. Because
But
we
think about
idolize
it
them
like
so
that.
much.
They
Yeah.
went to the fucking dentist, from every year or so.
Yeah. Think about it that way.
Yeah.
Thanks so
Throwing
much.
that out there.
Thanks so much once again. You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much anywhere you get
If you dare.
Google Podcasts, pretty much anywhere we get podcasts.
Let's see the replay.
Let's see the replay. We got a bunch of different ideas we're kicking around, so I'm gonna just not announce what we're doing next week until we actually like a day or so before we do it. If you want to find out about that, you can follow us on Twitter at tinfoil_radio.
He's going to tell me what next week's show is after the show. After next week's show. Hey, did you know what that show was about? No, I was lost.
Whoa, what happened?
No, that makes so much sense now.
I also love that you're right. When we start doing these episodes, we're getting to the point now where we read them so many times and so much, and I've done so much research, we start building our own conspiracies. And you know what? That's part of the fun. So until next time, we'll see you next Friday. And remember, if you've heard this, you're already dead. No, we're already dead.
Oh, shit.
What is my problem?